I use a variety of jigs at the table saw in order to get accurate cuts. One I turn to frequently is the granddaddy of them all, and that's a tenoning jig. Now what I like about a tenoning jig is that it creates smooth tenon cheeks that are going to create a strong, long-lasting glue joint. Now in order to get the best results with a jig, you're going to take a little bit of time to set up both the table saw and the jig itself, and that starts with understanding how a tenoning jig works. Now in a nutshell, what it does is the jig holds a workpiece upright as you pass it across the blade. In order to do that, the workpiece registers against a wide fence. Then on the back side, there's a backstop that holds the workpiece upright. When the workpiece is in place, you lock it down with a clamp so it's not going to shift while you make a cut. This fence assembly is attached to and slides on a heavy-duty cast iron base. The base has a bar on it so that the jig can slide in the miter gauge slots on your table saw. Now in order to make an accurate tenon, this fence assembly needs to slide side to side to position the workpiece in relationship to the blade. To do that, the fence assembly is attached with a studded knob on this backside to be able to accurately position the fence assembly. Once it's set, you'll lock it down with this handle. You'll find that most table saw tenoning jigs will share these same features and adjustments. Before I get to setting up the tenoning jig itself, I want to take care of a few setup details on the table saw. Because if your table saw isn't set right, no matter what you do with the tenoning jig, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. The first thing to check is to raise the saw blade, and you're checking here to make sure that the blade is square to the saw table. Then since the jig rides in the miter gauge slot, you want to be sure that the blade is parallel to the miter gauge slot in your saw table. Later on, I'm going to use the rip fence to cut consistent tenon shoulders. So I'm going to bring the rip fence over and lock it down. And here you're checking again that the fence is square to the saw table and that it's parallel with the miter gauge slot. With the table saw dialed in, there are a few setup essentials to take care of on the tenoning jig itself. So I'm going to bring it in here, pull this workpiece out, and pull the clamp out of the way. The fence on the tenoning jig is adjustable so that you can cut angled tenons. However, most of the time you're just cutting straight tenons, so you want to make sure to check that the face of the fence is 90 degrees to the saw table. In a similar way, the backstop on the jig is adjustable to cut angled kerfs. Now for our purposes, I want to make sure again that it's 90 degrees to the saw table as well. The final check is to slide the jig up alongside the blade, and here you're making sure that the face of the fence is parallel with the blade. To do that, I'm going to loosen the clamp and bring the fence up to the blade. What I'm looking for here is that the face of the fence is making even contact on the saw teeth all the way across the width of the fence. Now if it isn't, you can loosen the screws that hold the base of the jig to the miter bar and make any adjustments. Once you lock it down, the nice thing is you don't have to worry about that adjustment again. Now taking a few minutes to set up both the saw and the jig means that you're going to end up with accurate, snug-fitting tenons every time you use the jig.